What does an artist do? That seems like a question with an obvious answer. Make art, of course. But what do artists think about? What process do they follow? What do they study? How do they become proficient in communicating visually? Harvard's Graduate School of Education did a study of the most effective art programs to see what they emphasized. Out of this study came what is now known as the 8 studio habits of mind. These studio habits, which effective art programs help to develop in students, are emphasized precisely because they mirror what real artists do. Of course, there are no rules to being an artist, but these habits allow artists to combine expressiveness and discipline to their thinking and practice. Mature artists have integrated these habits and probably don't consciously think about them as separate entities. All artists have their own approach. If we are studying about art, it would make sense that we would behave like artists do. Let's take a look at each habit and see how you might apply that to your study of art. Artists see what other people miss. You must examine the world carefully, slowly, intensely. Artists need to be curious. They try to find out how things work. They study nature, people, and things. They look for the shadow cast by a tree, the delicacy of an insect's wing, or the subtle shape of a chin. They examine how we see. They try to find what lies beneath the surface. Artists also look carefully at other artists' work to decipher how color, shape, and line make visual poetry. Artist Frank Stella says that one learns how to paint by looking at other painters. Being curious about how other artists make choices is what will help you develop your own visual language. Artists don't exist in a vacuum. They are products of their times and communities and are influenced by world events just like everyone else. The world of art is made up of both professional and amateur artists, museums and galleries, arts organizations, patrons, collectors, and ordinary people who love the arts. Art helps define our cultural heritage and community values. Art is discussed and debated in books, magazines, cafes, online, in school, and in films and on TV. Understanding and participating in these forums is part of being an artist. But mostly you need to look at a lot of art. If you want your own ideas as an artist to mature, you need to learn what other artists who have come before you were doing through studying art history. Discovering the range and depth of artistic thinking throughout time helps us understand much about being human, and it helps your own artistic thinking become more sophisticated. Making connections between art and the context in which it was made can often lead to a deeper understanding of the meaning of a work of art, and increase an appreciation of what the artist was trying to communicate. Artists can make art out of anything. An artist chooses certain materials to realize their vision. Some artists go to art school and some do not. But in either case, developing a feel for materials and tools is essential for this realization to happen. Experimenting with new tools, materials, and forms has been a staple of modern art for sure. But there is only one thing that can help you develop this feel, and that is practice. But that practice needs to be focused practice. You must pay close attention to what is happening in front of you and ask yourself critical questions about how the materials work and how you are using them. You also need to learn how to safely use and care for the tools and materials. Sometimes artists use materials or tools that are unsafe if used incorrectly. Research, paying attention to proper instruction, common sense, and again practice will all help you to develop your craft. Developing ideas is just as important as developing your craft. This requires an inquiring mindset and a comfort with ambiguity. The vast majority of a creative person's ideas usually don't work out. In art, there is no right or wrong, but an artist needs to decide what works and what doesn't. Eventually, you'll develop an intuition for what might be a useful path to follow, but the discovery of new territories or connections that mistakes present is part of what is exciting about making art. These new connections can only be made through trying different variations on an idea. Sometimes our brains get stuck, and you just have to make stuff and let your hand do the thinking. You need to be fearless. It's just art after all. Pushing beyond your comfort zone requires courage, but that's how we grow. If it was easy, anybody could do it. Artists are engaged with their work because they are passionate about it. But as Thomas Edison said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Whether your ideas are grand or intimate, you must put forth a focused effort. If an artwork doesn't communicate your ideas clearly, no matter how long you've worked on it, it will not be satisfying. It may take 1, 2, 10, 100 attempts to get your work where you want it to be. Sharing our experience is part of who we are as social beings. Artists communicate their vision of the world through their art. That vision may be spiritual, political, theoretically abstract, or intensely autobiographical. New ideas build on previous ideas. Not every idea has to be unique or original, but neither should an artist fall victim to cliché. In fact, we can often recognize multiple works by famous artists precisely because they work on variations of an idea until they exhaust its creative possibilities. Many artists spend as much, if not more, time looking at their work as they do actually making it. It takes critical self-reflection to make sure your work is communicating your intentions. Artists talk about art a lot. They hang out together and visit each other's studios and exhibitions. They get feedback from each other and from art critics about their work. Participating in discussions with peers about art and giving and receiving thoughtful and sensitive feedback helps every artist grow. But sometimes even gentle criticism is not easy to take. An artist needs a thick skin sometimes. Keep an open mind and remember that critical observations will help you grow as an artist. All these habits come together to help you express your intentions. Whether you are trying to express an idea or an emotion through your art, you need to use the visual language effectively. As you practice, your skills will improve. By closely observing the world and by studying other artists, your thinking will become more sensitive and sophisticated, and what you are trying to express will have the potential to communicate deeply with your audience. Making art is fun. An art class allows you to use a different type of thinking than you might in some of your other classes. You get to exercise your creative side. But understanding the many aspects of art also requires focus and concentration. As you go through your art course, try to keep these habits in mind and consciously try to develop them in your practice.